Have you ever wondered why so many intelligent and well-informed people sometimes make catastrophic decisions? Why entire civilizations, led by brilliant minds, often march toward the abyss with unshakable confidence? There is something we miss when we believe we finally understand the world around us perfectly. Perhaps the real danger isn't ignorance, but the illusion of total clarity, that feeling of having finally removed all uncertainty, of now seeing reality exactly as it is. You've probably experienced this at some point, that crystalline certainty of being absolutely right about something important, only to later discover that there was far more complexity involved than you could have imagined. It's unsettling when that happens, isn't it? Suddenly, the world that once seemed so orderly and comprehensible reveals itself as something much more chaotic and mysterious. But what if that discomfort is actually an evolutionary safeguard? What if nature has programmed us never to see too clearly, precisely to protect us from ourselves? Throughout human history, we've always sought greater clarity. From the earliest mythological explanations of the world to the sophisticated scientific models of today, our goal has been to illuminate the shadows, eliminate ambiguity, and achieve an ever more precise understanding of reality. This pursuit has brought us extraordinary achievements: the ability to predict eclipses, develop vaccines, build skyscrapers, and send robots to other planets. Each of these feats represents a triumph of clarity over confusion. Yet there's a fascinating paradox in this journey. The most dangerous moments in human history often coincide not with periods of great ignorance, but with eras when groups of people believed they had achieved absolute clarity about fundamental questions. Think of Nazi Germany. The architects of the Holocaust were not ignorant or irrational in the traditional sense. On the contrary, many were highly educated, methodical, and deeply convinced of the logic behind their worldview. The problem wasn't a lack of clarity, it was excessive, distorted clarity. They had built an explanatory system so complete and internally coherent that it seemed to answer every important question. Why did Germany lose World War I? Why was the economy in crisis? How could the nation's greatness be restored? All these complex issues received simple, clear, and completely wrong answers. Excessive clarity erased the doubts that could have served as a vital moral brake. Or consider the Soviet Union under Stalin. Once again, we find intelligent and dedicated people who believed they had finally decoded the laws of history and economics. Materialist dialectics provided a clear explanation for everything, from family relations to the destiny of nations. With this supposed clarity came the justification to eliminate anyone or anything that appeared to contradict the official worldview. Millions died not because of ignorance, but because of false clarity that left no room for doubt or dissent. These extreme examples illustrate a pattern we can observe on a smaller scale in our own lives. When you're absolutely certain about something, when all nuance and ambiguity vanish, when every piece of the puzzle seems to fit perfectly, that's precisely the moment you should ask yourself, am I seeing too clearly? Is reality truly as organized and comprehensible as it seems right now? Evolution shaped our minds not to see reality with perfect clarity, but to survive and reproduce in complex, unpredictable environments. Our perception is a pragmatic tool, not a mirror of reality. We see what we need to see in order to survive, not necessarily what exists. Think about how we perceive colors. The electromagnetic spectrum is continuous, yet our eyes divide it into discrete categories like red, green, or blue. This simplification helped our ancestors identify ripe fruit or potential dangers, but it doesn't reflect the true complexity of light. Our minds are constantly simplifying, categorizing, and ignoring information to make the world manageable. At a deeper level, our very consciousness seems to act as a filter that both reveals and obscures. Thinkers from Kant to modern neuroscientists have argued that we never experience reality directly, but only through mental models constructed by our brains. These models are necessarily simplifications. If we perceived all the complexity of the world around us, from the motion of every atom to every possible social interaction, we would be paralyzed. Limited clarity is not a bug in our cognitive system, but an essential feature. Perhaps nature has built into us a certain capacity for confusion as a safety mechanism. Doubt, uncertainty, and even contradiction can be valuable tools that prevent us from acting on dangerous oversimplifications. When you feel that you've completely understood a complex person, a social problem, or a natural phenomenon, that sense of total clarity may actually be a warning sign that your mental model has become dangerously oversimplified. It's interesting to note how the great spiritual and philosophical traditions of the world often value a certain kind of obscurity. In Taoism, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao. In the negative theology of Christianity and Judaism, God is beyond human comprehension. In Zen Buddhism, koans deliberately challenge logic to push the practitioner beyond superficial clarity. These traditions seem to intuit that there is wisdom in the fog, that some truths are best grasped indirectly, as if we were looking at something too bright through a darkened glass. In the modern world, our pursuit of clarity has taken on new dimensions with the rise of digital technology and artificial intelligence. Today, we accumulate and process data on an unprecedented scale, creating ever more sophisticated predictive models. Big data promises to reveal patterns that were once invisible. Machine learning algorithms can find correlations that escape human perception. We are building systems that seem to offer a clarity about the world our ancestors could never have imagined. And yet, this same technology reveals new forms of opacity. The most powerful algorithms are often the least understandable, even to their creators. We call this the black box problem of artificial intelligence. An algorithm may make extremely accurate predictions without us being able to fully understand how it reaches those conclusions. It's as if our quest for greater clarity has generated a new kind of darkness. This raises profound questions about the Enlightenment project itself, which placed reason, science, and clarity at the center of human progress. Perhaps we need a more nuanced understanding of clarity, one that recognizes both its power and its dangers. True intellectual sophistication lies not in eliminating all ambiguities, but in learning to navigate them, recognizing where clarity is possible and where complexity resists simplification. Let's consider how this manifests in everyday life. Think about human relationships. When you believe you completely understand another person, that you can predict with certainty how they'll react or what they're thinking, it's usually a sign that you've reduced that person to a caricature. Real people are full of contradictions, changes, and surprises. If you see someone too clearly, you're probably seeing only a simplified model, not the person in all their complexity. Or consider the major social issues of our time. When someone offers simple, crystal clear explanations for problems like economic inequality, climate change, or geopolitical conflicts, be skeptical, not because these issues are incomprehensible, but because any model that eliminates all nuance and ambiguity is likely oversimplifying a complex reality. Simplistic solutions usually create more problems than they solve, precisely because they ignore the inherent complexity of human systems. I need to pause for a moment and ask you directly, which aspect of this technological future we're discussing most awakens your fear or apprehension? Do you lie awake at night thinking about it too? I know we often keep such worries to ourselves, perhaps out of fear of seeming paranoid or technophobic in a world that celebrates every new innovation without question. But your anxieties are valid and probably shared by more people than you imagine. Share in the comments. My biggest fear about our technological future is your voice can help create a space where we can discuss these collective fears honestly instead of suppressing them. And perhaps by naming these fears together, we can begin to imagine ways to confront them. This doesn't mean we should abandon the pursuit of knowledge or embrace obscurantism. Science, logic, and rigorous analysis remain our best tools for understanding the world. But we can practice them with epistemological humility, recognizing the inherent limits of our mental models. We can seek clarity without falling into the illusion that any map, no matter how detailed, can fully capture the territory it represents. One way to cultivate this humility is through what psychologists call metacognition, thinking about thinking. When we find ourselves with seemingly perfect clarity about something important, we can ask questions such as, what information might I be overlooking? What unexamined assumptions are shaping my view? How would someone with a different perspective see this situation? This kind of self-examination doesn't weaken our ability to make decisions. On the contrary, it makes our conclusions more robust by acknowledging their limitations. Another valuable practice is what the American philosopher William James called pluralistic attention. Instead of trying to reduce complex phenomena to a single explanation, we can hold multiple interpretations in mind simultaneously, recognizing that each may capture different aspects of reality. For example, when considering a historical event like the French Revolution, we can acknowledge economic, political, cultural, and psychological factors all at once without trying to reduce it to a single clear and dominant cause. The history of science offers inspiring examples of this more nuanced approach. Albert Einstein revolutionized our understanding of the universe not because he had perfect clarity, but because he recognized that previous models, though internally coherent, had fundamental limitations. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in quantum mechanics is not an admission of defeat, but a profound insight into the nature of reality itself. Modern biology acknowledges that living organisms are complex systems that resist simple mechanistic reductions. In each case, progress came not from eliminating all ambiguities, but from finding more sophisticated ways to navigate them. In the information age, this balance between clarity and acknowledgement of complexity becomes even more crucial. We are bombarded daily with more data than we could ever process. Algorithms and AI systems promote the illusion of complete and objective understanding. Social media rewards short, forceful statements over nuance. In this environment, cultivating what the poet John Keats called negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainties without the irritable need to reach definitive conclusions, becomes not only an intellectual virtue, but a necessity for mental sanity. Take, for example, how we react to news and information. When we see an alarming headline or a surprising statistic, our natural tendency is to immediately seek a clear and definitive interpretation. Is this person a hero or a villain? Is this development good or bad? Does this study prove or refute a certain theory? But reality rarely fits so neatly into binary categories. Learning to inhabit the in-between zone, to genuinely say, I don't know yet, or this is complicated, can be liberating and paradoxically can lead to deeper understanding over time. The philosopher and mathematician Bertrand Russell once observed that the problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so sure of themselves, while the wise are full of doubts. This observation captures something essential about the relationship between wisdom and clarity. Excessive certainty, the feeling of total clarity, often arises not from deep understanding, but from simplification that ignores the world's true complexity. Consider how this applies to the great issues of our age. Climate change is an existential challenge, demanding urgent action, yet it also involves complex systems and inevitable uncertainties. The development of advanced artificial intelligence promises enormous benefits, but also profound risks we cannot fully predict. Globalization has connected the world in unprecedented ways, but has also created vulnerabilities and imbalances we are still trying to grasp. In each case, neither absolute clarity nor total confusion serves us well. We need a third approach, one that recognizes patterns and trends without pretending to possess certainty beyond what is realistically possible. On a personal level, this perspective can transform how we navigate our own lives. How often have you found yourself stuck between seemingly clear options, stay in a secure job, or risk a new career, maintain a relationship or end it, follow a creative passion or pursue financial stability? The illusion that there is a perfectly clear answer to these questions can be a source of great suffering. Perhaps wisdom lies in recognizing that no choice is perfect, that all major decisions involve trade-offs and uncertainties, and that we can make meaningful choices without the illusion of total clarity. There is something profoundly liberating in recognizing the limits of human clarity. When we abandon the impossible quest for absolute certainty, we make room for more genuine curiosity, greater tolerance for ambiguity, and even a sense of awe before the mystery of the world. This does not mean abandoning intellectual rigor or falling into vague relativism where all opinions are equally valid. On the contrary, it means pursuing understanding with both determination and humility, acknowledging the power and the limits of our cognitive tools. This approach also affects how we relate to others, especially those with whom we disagree. When someone sees the world fundamentally differently from us, Our instinct is to think, how can this person not see what's so clear to me? But what if clarity itself is part of the problem? What if different perspectives capture different facets of a reality that is inherently more complex than any single viewpoint can encompass? This doesn't mean all opinions are equally valid. It means genuine dialogue requires a willingness to question even the things that seem most obvious to us. History is full of examples where what seemed perfectly clear to one generation proved limited or mistaken to the next. For centuries, it was obvious that the sun revolved around the earth. For a long time, it seemed clear that certain races or genders were naturally inferior to others. Until recently, it was self-evident that human consciousness was completely separate from anything in the animal realm. In each case, what appeared to be clarity was in fact a kind of myopia, a limited way of seeing that confused a partial model for the whole reality. This raises a fascinating question. What things seem perfectly clear to us today that future generations will view as obviously limited or misleading? What mental models are we treating as reality? What simplifications are we mistaking for the whole truth? We cannot, of course, answer these questions definitively, but merely asking them may serve as a powerful antidote to the illusion of excessive clarity. This kind of epistemological humility does not mean giving up the pursuit of knowledge or the ability to act in the world. Surgeons still need to operate, judges still need to decide cases, and leaders still need to set directions. But they can do so with a sharper awareness of their potential blind spots and the limitations inherent even in their best judgments. This awareness doesn't weaken effective action, it makes it more adaptable, more open to feedback, and ultimately wiser. There is a creative tension here worth exploring. On one hand, we need clear, distinct mental models to navigate the world. Our ancestors needed to know, with reasonable clarity, which plants were safe to eat and which predators posed threats. Today, we need enough clarity to drive safely, diagnose diseases, and design secure buildings. On the other hand, we must recognize that even our most sophisticated models are approximations, not perfect captures of reality. Navigating this tension, knowing when to trust our sense of clarity and when to question it, is one of the great challenges of human existence. Artificial intelligence offers us an intriguing mirror for examining this question. As we develop increasingly powerful AI systems, we face a choice. Should we prioritize models that seem to offer complete clarity and explainability, or systems that can process greater complexity even if they operate in ways we cannot fully understand? The answer isn't simple. In some areas, such as medical diagnostics or judicial systems, explainability may be crucial for trust and accountability. In others, such as climate prediction or genomic analysis, the ability to process vast complexities may be more valuable than perfect clarity. There is no universal answer, only difficult choices requiring human judgment. Perhaps one of the deepest paradoxes of the human condition is that our greatest strength, the ability to create mental models of the world, is also our greatest vulnerability. We build maps to navigate the territory of reality, and those maps are indispensable. But when we confuse the map with the territory, when we forget that our representations are always simplifications, we risk acting on dangerous illusions. Excessive clarity, the feeling that we have finally eliminated all ambiguity and uncertainty, may be a sign that we've fallen into that trap. So what can we do to cultivate a healthier relationship with clarity? How can we pursue understanding without falling into the illusion of absolute certainty? One approach is what contemporary philosopher Nassim Nicholas Taleb calls the via negativa, focusing not on asserting what we know, but on identifying and eliminating false certainties. Another is the practice of actively exploring multiple perspectives, even those we disagree with, not to embrace vague relativism, but to triangulate a more robust view. A third approach is cultivating what psychologist Philip Tetlow calls calibrated humility learning to quantify our uncertainty and update our beliefs according to new evidence. On a more personal level, we can work to develop greater comfort with ambiguity. This might mean practicing suspension of judgment, resisting the impulse to reach firm conclusions before adequately exploring a topic. It might mean cultivating what Buddhists call beginner's mind, approaching familiar situations with the curiosity of someone seeing them for the first time. It might mean appreciating art, music, literature, and other forms of expression that deliberately resist simple, univocal interpretation. Consider how this perspective could transform our social institutions. Our educational systems often reward clear, definitive answers to questions that don't admit such simplicity. Our political processes favor promises of certainty over acknowledgements of complexity. Our media culture thrives on dramatic headlines and simple narratives, not on nuanced explorations. Imagine how these institutions might change if they began to value limited clarity over false certainty, if they recognized that some of the most important questions we face simply don't have perfectly clear answers. There are also profound implications for how we understand our own future as a species. We are in the midst of what some call the fourth industrial revolution, a fundamental transformation driven by artificial intelligence, biotechnology, the Internet of Things, and other advanced technologies. These tools promise unprecedented clarity, the ability to predict human behavior, optimize complex systems, and eliminate uncertainties in fields from medicine to financial markets. But if history has taught us anything, it is that every new form of knowledge brings new blind spots. The apparent clarity these technologies offer may conceal new forms of ignorance we have not yet begun to recognize. Perhaps true wisdom lies not in seeking ever greater clarity, but in developing a more sophisticated relationship with uncertainty. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, we can learn to navigate through it with greater skill. Instead of fearing ambiguity, we can recognize it as an inevitable feature of a universe that will always exceed our complete understanding. Instead of searching for a single perfect map of reality, we can cultivate the ability to switch between multiple maps, acknowledging the strengths and limitations of each. This is not a call for confusion or obscurity for their own sake. Some forms of clarity are genuinely valuable and liberating. When we identify a previously mysterious disease, when we demystify harmful superstitions, when we separate facts from propaganda, we are using clarity in ways that expand human freedom and alleviate suffering. The danger does not lie in clarity itself, but in the illusion that we have reached a complete and definitive understanding of something that remains more complex than our models can capture. If these reflections touch on something you've been feeling but perhaps haven't found words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you'll join a growing community of people who share your questions and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era, not only to seek understanding, but also to discover wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us in this ongoing journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with greater wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. Ultimately, what I'm suggesting is not to abandon the pursuit of clarity, but to enrich it with a deeper appreciation of complexity. We need clarity to act in the world, to communicate ideas, to solve problems. But we must remember that this clarity is always provisional, always incomplete, always an approximation of a reality that exceeds our total capacity for comprehension. When we forget this, when we mistake our models for reality itself, we risk a particular kind of blindness, one that comes not from darkness, but from a light so intense that it blinds as much as it reveals. There is a profound beauty in this humbler approach to clarity, a beauty that recognizes both the power and the limits of human cognition. We can strive to understand the world as best we can, using all the ingenuity, rigor, and creativity we can summon. At the same time, we can preserve a sense of awe before mystery, an awareness that reality will always exceed our categories and explanations. In that delicate balance between knowledge and wonder, between clarity and mystery, we may find a deeper wisdom than any absolute certainty could ever offer. This wisdom is not merely intellectual, but deeply practical. It helps us make better decisions, form more authentic relationships, and live with greater integrity in a complex world. It protects us from the dangers of excessive clarity, dogmatism, rigidity, the tendency to distort reality to fit our pre-existing models. It allows us to inhabit the fertile ground between knowing and not knowing, between understanding and marveling, between clarity and mystery. Perhaps you can begin today by looking at an area of your life where you feel absolute certainty, where everything seems perfectly clear, and ask yourself, what might I be missing here? What complexity am I ignoring? What alternative perspectives could I consider? This practice will not weaken your ability to act in the world. On the contrary, it may make your actions wiser, more adaptable, and ultimately more effective. True clarity does not come from eliminating all ambiguity, but from learning to navigate it with grace